Okay, chapter 12, video 1 is kind of just an introductory video. We're going to talk about the nature of a corporation. So a corporation is a legal entity distinct and separate from individuals who create and operate it. A legal entity of a corporation may acquire, own, and dispose of property in its own name. It also may incur liabilities and enter into contracts. Most importantly, it can sell shares of its own ownership. And when it sells shares of its ownership, that's called stock. So stock is what we call ownership shares in a corporation. So what this means is a lot of things. Number one is a corporation in a lot of ways has a lot of the same rights as individuals do. Not only can it own property, obviously owe debt, have liabilities, it can also sue and be sued. And there's other elements the corporation itself can do. It is a separate entity from the individual itself. Corporations are formed under the application of incorporation laws within a state. So states themselves are actually what you incorporate in. You don't incorporate with the federal government, you incorporate within the state that you're in. When you don't necessarily have to be in it. It's very tax advantageous to organize or form your corporation in Delaware, for example. So you see there's a list on page 563 about all the corporations that have their state of incorporation being Delaware, even if they don't necessarily have headquarters there or even have a place there. I'd recommend you read through the advantages and disadvantages and explanations of the corporation in Exhibit 2, but I'm not going to go through that in this video myself. So stock is what we sell as a share of ownership in the business. A stockholder is someone who owns a share of that stock. There's two different types of stock. There's common stock. Well, there's more than just two, but the two main types of stock are common stock and preferred stock. Common stock is just kind of the normal stock. Common stockholders are eligible to vote usually and how the organization is run. They also usually have the ability to receive dividends. And then there's preferred shareholders, and preferred shareholders also receive dividends, but they generally have no voting powers. But the thing about preferred shareholders is that it's kind of like they sound, they're preferred. They get paid dividends first. And if there's anything left over, then the common shareholders receive the remainder of that dividend. So preferred shareholders get paid first, and that's one of the things we're getting ready to talk about. So how do I know how many shares of stock are out there? Well, the corporation has to authorize a certain number of shares. So authorizing shares of stock means that that's stock that is available for the corporation, not necessarily for sale, but that the corporation has the option to issue. So once they choose to issue some of it, then that would be issued stock. Issued stock at this point means that it is out there to be purchased by investors or by potential stockholders, but has not yet necessarily been purchased. Or it's issued and can actually be owned back by the corporation too. And then shares outstanding are the actual shares that are owned by a separate stockholder themselves. So those are the three kind of classifications. Something else about stock that's important to know is that it has a par value, and the par value is a dollar amount assigned to each stock. So it's kind of like a minimum, but not necessarily a minimum. So dollar value assigned to each share of stock. Share of stock. So this is kind of just like a basis. Most corporations now either have very low par values, like pennies, or even small percentages of pennies, or no par stock at all, but we'll go through the examples in here and see how we deal with difference between par value versus the value that stock is actually sold for. Okay, so I think that's it for the intro video. We'll go into preferred stock next, and specifically cumulative preferred stock, which kind of starts on page 567.